Now, what I typically find helpful is when I'm beginning this project to think back in terms of the earlier steps when I first outlined this from the 10,000 foot view. That is, looking at the high level metacode view, what I would need to do, and I actually create spaces for this. So if I was to create this R notebook, then I might indicate that I need to, let's go back here and see, I need to have data for my 3 conditions. And so I'm going to insert a code chunk for that. Then I'm going to need to be able to create box plots. And I'm going to insert a code chunk for this. I need to calculate summary statistics. And I'm going to need to be able to calculate my ANOVA table. So what I've done here is I've really created a template for moving forward. And now at each level, I can flesh this out. So here what I've added is that I need to, for my data frame, have a variable with the scores and a variable with the 3 categories. The other thing that I indicated here is that I need to define a linear model for my ANOVA. Now let's go further back. I'm going to have to create the scores for each of my conditions. And now I'm getting into the specifics of what I need. So the whole idea of metacoding, as opposed to just speaking R, is right here. And this is akin to creating some overview, some concept map, some outline when you're getting ready to write, so that you know what it is that you're going to do at each section. And that's what this tells us right here. So everything else is just the specifics. I'm not going to take up your time doing all the specifics because every project is different, but we do have specifics written down here in this final diagram. I'm generating scores for placebo with R norm. So when I come over here, first placebo, what I'm going to think about is what kind of object do I need? Well, this is just a bunch of scores, so all I need is a numeric vector, correct? I just need a numeric vector. And I indicate here, I've already thought about the fact that I'm going to be using R norm. Why? Because way back here, we saw that we wanted normally distributed scores with a mean and standard deviation. So the mean is 70, the standard deviation is 20. So here I could create placebo scores using R norm, and I believe I need 30 of those. Yes, 30 participants. And so I have 30 with a mean of 70 and a standard deviation of 20. Similarly for treatment A and treatment B. If I look at other aspects of this, here I'm going to create my 3 categories with the rep function. So up here, so this is going to be my factor variable, so I'll call that condition. And my condition can be created with the repeat. So I can repeat. Let's go ahead and call it 1 through 3, and each equals 30. And what that will do is it will give me a 1 30 times, a 2 30 times, a 3 30 times. If I want at this stage, and this is a good idea to do so, I can start actually making sure I'm getting what I intend it to. So here, if I look at condition, it looks like it from there. Let's see it up here in the console window. Yes, that's what I intend. Now, what else do I need to do here since this is a categorical variable? I need to create it as a factor. So let me just store it right back into condition, but I'm going to make a factor out of condition, and I have 3 levels in order for placebo, treatment 1, treatment 2, so I can label those at this point. And I can label them the 3 things that I want here: placebo, treatment A, and treatment B. And so forth. When I'm all done having my 3 categories and my variables with scores, I might even want to go ahead and put in, I could have done this originally, put in a little placeholder for create a data frame from variables. So this is the idea. The idea of metacoding is not the R language. The idea of metacoding is putting it all down step by step by step without any R language. And so that then what you just need to do is fill it all out and get it to do what you need it to do. One of the advantages of this is, as we saw here, let me go ahead and run both of these actually. As we saw here, we can take and check at each step of the way that we're getting what we intended. That's a whole lot less frustrating than writing all the code and then getting something different than you expected and trying to figure it out. Here we're checking each step of the way. If you combine this idea with the idea of functions, in a way what you're doing here is you're making, as it were, a function without making a function. That is, everything that I've done in this little section here, I could have done that as a function in which I say, hey, I want 30 scores, I want them to be normally distributed, I want these to be the labels. This is not worth making a function just for this, but it's the same kind of thinking. It's the same kind of mindset. And functions, one of the advantages is they help you do little chunks and fix them all up so they're working correctly before you go on. Well, it's the same thing here. In these little chunks that correspond to each of our grows, we can get them working correctly before we move on to the next step. Another thing I like to tell folk when I talk about making this outline and getting ready to get started is, if you're not sure what the steps are and working at the end and moving forward, you're stuck at some point, think about what you would do by hand if you had to do everything that R was going to do. What is it that you would do by hand? Write it out and see if that will help you create your diagram back over here and ultimately your template that you're creating here. So this whole concept, again, is not about coding. It's about metacoding. It's about creating the steps you need so that you can restrict yourself to little small pieces that you actually convert into the R language and test at a time, rather than doing a whole big project and getting confused every step along the way.